The drive home was suffocatingly silent. The streets of Denver, usually comforting with their quiet suburban glow, felt like they were closing in on me. Emily slumped in the passenger seat, her head lolling against the window as the effects of the alcohol settled in. I had my hands gripped tightly on the wheel, my knuckles white. My mind raced, replaying the night, her words, her laughter, the way she leaned in toward Jason. "You've been acting strange tonight," I said finally, breaking the silence. She scoffed, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot I'm not allowed to have fun anymore." I bit back a retort. She was drunk. This wasn't the time for a fight. As we pulled into the driveway, she muttered something under her breath, her words barely audible. But I heard them. "I don't even know why I married you." The air left my lungs. My hands froze on the steering wheel. "What did you just say?" I asked, my voice trembling. She laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "You heard me, Michael. God, you're so boring. You never take risks. You don't excite me anymore. I've tried to ignore it, but it's just not there." Her words hit me like a freight train, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. My chest felt heavy, like it was caving in under the weight of her confession. "I think you've said enough," I replied, my voice strained. I helped her into the house, guiding her toward the bedroom. She stumbled and fell onto the mattress, mumbling incoherent words as the alcohol fully took over. As I reached down to pull the blanket over her, she whispered something that made my blood run cold. I shouldn't have kissed him. Time seemed to stop. The room, the air, everything felt frozen in place. "What did you just say?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. But she didn't respond. She had already passed out, leaving me alone with her words echoing in my mind. I stood there, staring at Emily as she slept, her features softened in the haze of alcohol-induced oblivion. My mind was a storm, her words replaying on a relentless loop. I shouldn't have kissed him. It wasn't just her lack of attraction that gutted me, it was the realization of how little I truly knew her. This wasn't the woman I thought I had built a life with. This wasn't the Emily I had loved unconditionally for nearly a decade. I couldn't stay. I couldn't sit in that house, lie in that bed, or wake up beside someone who had shattered the very foundation of our marriage. I packed methodically. I wasn't angry, I was numb. Clothes, my laptop, my passport, and some cash. Essentials only. By the time I zipped my suitcase shut, the first light of dawn was seeping through the blinds. Emily stirred slightly, mumbling something incoherent, but didn't wake. I hesitated for a moment, standing at the doorway to the bedroom, my suitcase in hand. Should I confront her? Should I demand answers? But I already knew the truth, didn't I? Confronting her wouldn't fix the damage she'd done. It wouldn't erase her words or undo the betrayal. I left a note on the kitchen counter. Just a few lines, hastily scribbled on a piece of paper. "Emily, I heard what you said. I can't unhear it. You took something from me I can't get back, not just my trust, but the belief that we were in this together. I'm leaving. Don't try to find me." I locked the door behind me for the last time, the sound of it clicking shut feeling heavier than it ever had before. The drive out of Denver felt surreal. The city I had called home for years faded in my rearview mirror, replaced by highways stretching endlessly into the horizon. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to keep moving. Eventually, I found myself at a rundown motel just off Interstate 25. The neon sign flickered erratically, casting a dim glow over the parking lot. The room smelled faintly of mildew, the wallpaper was peeling, and the mattress sagged in the middle, but it was exactly what I needed, a place to disappear. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the battered carpet, my mind racing. What was I supposed to do now? How could I start over when my life had just imploded? I opened my laptop and began dismantling my shared life with Emily. The joint bank accounts were the first to go. I transferred my portion of the savings into a private account I had opened months ago, back when I had thought about launching a side business. Emily had mocked me for it. "Why do you always plan for disasters that'll never happen?" she'd said, laughing. I guess this time, the disaster came. Next, I sent an email to my boss. I kept it brief and professional, citing personal reasons for my immediate resignation. My job had been more than just a paycheck, it had been part of my identity. But I couldn't risk Emily using my workplace to track me down. By the time the sun was high in the sky, I had erased nearly every trace of myself from our shared life. The house would remain hers to deal with, the mortgage, the utilities, the subscriptions. She could keep them all. The only thing I left behind was the note. It wasn't for Emily's benefit, it was for mine. Writing it down gave me a sense of closure, a chance to articulate what I felt without the fear of being interrupted or manipulated. After checking out of the motel, I drove for hours, crossing state lines without any clear destination. I stopped only for gas and whatever fast food I could grab. I tossed my old phone into a dumpster behind a gas station and picked up a prepaid one at a convenience store. No apps, no distractions, just a phone for emergencies. Eventually, I settled in a mid-sized city called Pueblo, a couple of hours south of Denver. It wasn't too big to feel overwhelming, but it was big enough that I could blend in. I found a modest studio apartment in an older building with a creaky elevator and water-stained ceilings. It wasn't much, but it was clean, affordable, and anonymous. For the first time in years, I was alone, not just physically, but emotionally. My days were simple. I'd go for long runs along the Arkansas River, explore the city's quiet streets, and lose myself in the monotony of my new job at a hardware store. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and kept my mind busy. Still, Emily lingered in my thoughts. I'd replay her words, the tone of her voice, the way she looked at Jason at the party. Anger would flare up, but just as quickly, it would dissolve into sadness. It wasn't just that she'd betrayed me, it was that she'd turned me into someone I didn't recognize. One night, as I lay awake in the dark, I made a decision. Leaving wasn't enough. Emily needed to feel the weight of what she'd done. She needed to understand the devastation she had caused, not just through the absence of me, but through the unraveling of her own life. I started small, using a burner email account to send anonymous messages to her office. I knew where she worked, an ad agency in Denver's downtown. My message was vague but suggestive, hinting at her behavior at the party and her unprofessionalism. I didn't name names or make explicit accusations, but I planted seeds of doubt. A week later, I saw her Facebook post, "Rough week at work. Stress is through the roof." I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. But that wasn't enough. I turned my attention to Jason, the coworker she'd kissed at the party. It didn't take much to find him online. Married, of course. A quick message to his wife, delivered from another burner account, was all it took. I didn't include specifics, just enough to ignite suspicion. "You should ask Jason about the party last month. Sometimes the truth isn't as clean as it looks." Within days, Emily's posts grew more sporadic and erratic. Photos of her with Jason in the office disappeared from her profile. Her captions became less upbeat, more strained. One post stuck with me, a picture of her with a glass of wine, her eyes swollen from crying. The caption read, "Mistakes have consequences. Learning that the hard way." I should have felt triumphant, but instead, a strange emptiness settled in my chest. Was this what I wanted? Was this enough? Emily's life was unraveling, and from afar, I kept pulling the threads. Each small act of revenge was a reminder of the power I now held, the power to make her feel the pain she had inflicted on me. Her social media posts became increasingly sparse. When she did post, it was clear she was struggling. A photo of an empty coffee mug with the caption, "Mornings feel different now," or a late-night selfie with red-rimmed eyes and a single-word caption, "Regret." But even as her world crumbled, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Watching her suffer from a distance wasn't enough. I wanted her to know it was me. I wanted her to understand that I was behind the chaos. One night, I drafted a message, "Emily, you thought you could hurt me and get away with it, but actions have consequences. You betrayed me in the worst way possible. Every tear you've cried, every piece of your life that's fallen apart, that's just a taste of what you deserve. Don't forget, you made this bed, and now you have to lie in it." I didn't send it. Not yet. A few days later, I received an unexpected email from a mutual friend, Sarah. Her name in my inbox sent a wave of conflicting emotions through me. I hadn't spoken to anyone from my old life since I'd left, and seeing her name felt like a crack in the wall I had built around myself. The email was short, "Michael, Emily's been asking everyone about you. She's not doing well. I don't know what happened between you two, but I thought you should know." I stared at the screen for a long time. Part of me wanted to respond, to tell Sarah everything, but I knew it wouldn't help. Sharing my side of the story wouldn't make the betrayal any less real. Instead, I sent Emily the email I had written, adjusting it slightly to leave no room for doubt. "Emily, I know you've been trying to find me. Stop. I'm not coming back. I've moved on, and you have no one to blame but yourself. Every tear you've cried, every piece of your life that's fallen apart, that's a fraction of what you deserve. You betrayed me, and now you're paying the price." The response came faster than I expected. Less than an hour later, my burner account pinged with a new message, "Michael, please, just let me talk to you. I'll do anything. I don't know what's worse, what I did to you, or what I've done to myself because of it. I've lost everything, and I know I deserve it, but I need to tell you how sorry I am. Please, let me say it to your face." Her words were desperate, raw, and filled with regret. For a moment, I hesitated. Was this what I had wanted all along? To make her feel as broken as I had felt? Or had I been chasing something else, a sense of closure, maybe, or the validation of hearing her admit her mistakes? I decided it was time to confront her, not for reconciliation, but to ensure she truly understood the damage she had caused. Using the same burner email, I sent her a simple message, "Emily, if you want to say something, meet me tomorrow at 3 p.m. at the Roasted Bean on Pearl Street. You have 5 minutes. The Roasted Bean was a quiet coffee shop on the outskirts of Pueblo. It was far enough from Denver that I knew she wouldn't have any familiar faces to turn to. It was the perfect place for a conversation that would be final. The next day, I arrived early, choosing a corner table with a clear view of the entrance. The coffee shop was nearly empty, the low hum of quiet conversations and the occasional hiss of the espresso machine the only sounds. I ordered a black coffee and waited, my heart pounding harder with each passing minute. At exactly 3 p.m., Emily walked through the door. She looked different, thinner, her face pale and drawn. Her once carefully styled hair was pulled back into a loose ponytail, and her eyes, red and puffy, darted nervously around the room until they landed on me. Her expression shifted to something between relief and heartbreak. Slowly, she made her way to my table, hesitating for a moment before sitting across from me. "Michael," she whispered, her voice trembling. I said nothing, letting the silence stretch between us. She fidgeted with her hands, her fingers twisting the strap of her purse as she tried to find the words. "I don't even know where to start," she stammered finally. "I'm so sorry, for everything. For the things I said, for what I did. You didn't deserve any of it." I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "You're right. I didn't." Her breath hitched, tears pooling in her eyes. "I was stupid. Selfish. I thought I don't know what I thought. That I wanted more? Something different? But I was wrong. I didn't realize how much I'd lose until it was gone. Her words hung in the air, heavy with regret. For a moment, I felt the faintest flicker of pity. But it wasn't enough to erase what she'd done. Emily, I said finally, my voice calm but cold, do you know what it feels like to hear the person you love say they don't want you anymore? To find out they betrayed you in the worst way possible? That's what you did to me. I know, she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. I know, and I'll regret it every day for the rest of my life. Good, I said, standing up and grabbing my coat. You should. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Her voice cracked as she pleaded, Michael, please. Don't go. Let me fix this. I paused for a moment, looking down at her. You can't fix this, Emily. Some things, once broken, can't be put back together. Without another word, I walked out, leaving her sitting there, sobbing quietly at the table. As I walked out of the roasted bean, a strange sense of finality washed over me. The confrontation I had envisioned for months, the one I thought would bring me peace, was over. Emily's tears, her apologies, her broken voice, they were all laid bare. But they didn't give me the satisfaction I'd hoped for. Instead, I felt hollow. For so long, my anger had been my fuel, pushing me forward. Now, without it, I wasn't sure who I was or what came next. Over the next few days, I tried to make sense of my emotions. My life had revolved around her betrayal, and now that the confrontation was over, the weight of my own emptiness became impossible to ignore. I had walked out of her life, but she still lived rent-free in my mind. I threw myself into distractions, longer hours at work, extra runs along the river, even late-night drives with no destination. But no matter how far I ran or how busy I kept myself, I couldn't escape the echoes of Emily's words in the coffee shop, I'll regret it every day for the rest of my life. Regret was a heavy burden, and I realized I carried it too. One sleepless night, I opened a blank journal I had bought on a whim. I began writing down everything I had been feeling, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the anger, the emptiness that followed. I poured it all onto the pages, every thought, every memory, every ounce of pain. When I finished, I stared at the pages for what felt like hours. It didn't fix anything, but it felt like I had released something, like I was no longer holding onto the poison inside me. I wasn't sure if it was forgiveness I was seeking or simply closure, but I knew I couldn't keep living like this. My life couldn't revolve around Emily or what she had done. I needed to move on, not just physically, but emotionally. Months passed, and I began rebuilding my life in earnest. I enrolled in a woodworking class at the local community center, something I'd always wanted to try but never had time for. I joined a hiking group, where I met people who didn't know anything about my past. Slowly but surely, I started creating a new version of myself, one that wasn't defined by what Emily had done. One crisp autumn morning, while hiking a trail along the mountains outside Pueblo, I paused at the summit. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. For the first time in what felt like years, I felt a sense of peace. Emily's betrayal was still a scar, but it no longer defined me. I had survived, and I was stronger for it. As for Emily, I could only imagine what her life had become. Mutual friends told me she had taken a leave of absence from work and that she spent most of her days alone in the house we used to share. Whether she found redemption or remained trapped in regret, would never know. And that was okay. On a cool spring morning, I stood in my backyard, a small fire pit crackling before me. In my hands was the journal I had filled with my pain, my anger, my grief. One by one, I tore the pages out and fed them to the flames. I watched as the fire consumed them, the smoke curling into the air like a final goodbye. When the last ember died out, I felt lighter, freer than I had in years. I wasn't the same man I had been when I left Denver, and I was grateful for that. I had rebuilt myself from the ashes of my old life, stronger and wiser. As I walked away from the fire, I carried with me a lesson that would guide me for the rest of my days. You can't control what others do to you, but you can control how you respond. And with that, I moved forward, leaving the pain, the betrayal, and the revenge behind.